Welcome to the Intercooler podcast. This is episode 270 with Dan Prosser and Andrew Frankel. This episode should have gone out last week, really.
Yeah, but not my fault.
It's not It's not your fault at all. Lots of you probably already know that our little girl arrived the day before we were due to be in the studio last week. So it was a lovely reason to miss a week of the Intercooler podcast.
Yeah.
For me, but we're back, and Mum and Baby are doing fantastically well. Dad is tired because we had our worst night's sleep with the new one last night.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic timing.
Brilliant.
But I'm here.
But you're here, and all is well, and that is all that matters.
That is all that matters. So thanks everyone for bearing with us, but we're back.
And congratulations.
Well, thank you.
It's been a long time since I have had that experience, but you don't kind of forget it.
No, it stays with you.
A safe arrival is kind of the best thing in the world. So I couldn't be happy for you guys.
It is also the most extraordinary thing to experience.
Yes.
It is just remarkable.
Probably more for your missus than for you, but
yes.
To witness.
Okay. We're going to get ourselves in trouble if we keep going. So let's move it on. So actually, I mean, it's quite good that we skipped a week because we can now talk about, we'll come on to this in a moment, but we can talk about the British Grand Prix yesterday.
Let's face it, we planned it that way, didn't we?
Yeah, there we go. But before we get started, right, there's a bit of housekeeping that I want to do.
Okay.
TI housekeeping, right? So a couple of months ago, we introduced some big front-end upgrades to the Intercooler app and website. Things like audio articles, ad-free listening to this podcast, a new midweek podcast. This is all stuff that our paying subscribers get. In the last few weeks, we've made some upgrades to the back end.
Yeah.
The result of that is that the app and the website are now running really nicely.
Yeah.
We were aware, other people were aware of some app performance issues.
Yeah, the website was always fine, wasn't it? But sometimes, like first thing in the morning when a lot of people tune in at 7 o'clock because that's when the notifications go out and people like, for some reason, to start their day with a nice chunky TI story to read. And with thousands of people piling in at 7 o'clock in the morning, the app was sometimes, how can we put this, not quite as swift to respond as we would have liked. All in the past.
Those issues are behind us. The app is running beautifully. There's also another little upgrade on the homepage of the app that I just want to draw people's attention to. It's called Best Of. It's a segment on the homepage that each day will serve you a new selection of 10 articles, 10 of the best articles that we've published in the 4 and a bit years we've been doing the Intercooler. So every single day, you'll get a new selection of 10. So if you've got an idle moment or some time to kill, scroll down the homepage a little bit and just choose a story that you probably haven't read before. And
in the hopefully unlikely event you have no idea what we're talking about and have yet to check out the Intercooler website and app, do the-intercooler.com. We are incredibly proud of it, and although you probably spend most of your time listening to us on this podcast, we spend most of our time doing that.
Yeah.
We think, and we hope you will agree, that it's a really, really great publication.
Yeah, it is the multi-award-winning ad-free online car magazine, and as a podcast listener, you can get a 20% discount on your TI subscription using coupon code POD20 at checkout. That's 20% discount for the first year. There'll be a link in the description, or just head to the-intercooler.com. Okay, one other bit of housekeeping that I want to do.
Okay.
We have a new partner.
We do.
Right? We've partnered with...
Oh, here we go.
Bear with.
Here comes the product placement.
Supernatural Car Care. There we go. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me holding up these rather lovely bottles of car care stuff from our friends at Supernatural. Supernatural is a really good fit for the Intercooler. Right.
But that's the point. We don't team up with people just because, I don't know, they want to give us money or whatever.
No.
We'll only do it with people that we are comfortable teaming up with.
Their whole thing, right, is stripping out the fragrances and the dyes. You know, a lot of car cleaning stuff is lurid colours and it smells of bubble gum or ice cream or something.
Absolutely.
They don't do that.
No.
This is all about good quality stuff.
So don't tell me, it actually cleans your car.
It does clean your car.
Wow. Who knew?
And that's it.
Who'd have thought it?
Their whole thing is good quality stuff without all the nonsense that often comes around these kinds of products.
Yeah.
And crucially, I think for our audience, it doesn't require specialist knowledge to use.
No.
You know, some of these very sort of specialist car cleaning things, you really have to learn what you're doing with each of them. This is tire and trim. This is shampoo. It's straightforward, right?
So if it were a car?
Oh, I'm glad you asked.
Carrera T?
Well, they liken it to a 911 GT3 RS.
Oh, okay.
Without AC, without a stereo, without sat nav.
Hardcore.
That's how they liken it. Liken it to a car, which rings a bell with us. And do you know what? The way they talk about their products, it just made me think of our magazine, because we, as people hopefully know, we just publish one really good story a day.
From one of the best writers that there is, writing in whatever the field is that we're publishing that day.
We don't feel the need to publish 6, 7, 8 stories a day. You know, every press release that drops into our inbox, we repurpose it, and we just don't do that.
Nor do we feel the need to review every crossover, plug-in, SUV, hybrid, whatever that comes along. We are very selective, and we choose the stuff that we think will work for you guys.
Yeah. So the Intercooler and Supernatural, a great fit. Now,
a supernatural fit, you might say.
You could say that. You can, if you want.
Goodness. Right. Excellent. Onward.
Well, there are a couple of interesting things to say here. Every month, we're going to give away a Supernatural car care kit worth around £125. Right? We're going to alternate between new subscribers and existing subscribers. So this month, in July, we're going to give away a kit to an existing subscriber.
Okay.
Someone who's been with us a while.
Yeah.
They'll be chosen at random.
Yeah. So this is somebody who subscribes to the TI website and app.
Yeah, that's right.
Not just somebody who follows this podcast.
No. They're a paying subscriber.
Exactly.
And then in August, we're going to give a kit away to a new subscriber, someone who subscribes in August to our website or app. It's a great kit. It's everything that you need to keep your car looking its best, worth something like £125. And every month we're going to give one away.
And do the subscribers need to do anything to get it, or do we just randomly allocate?
We randomly allocate. But if you are not one of the lucky few who wins one of these kits, there's a discount. So you can check out Supernatural at supernaturalcarcare.com. or click the link in the description, and TI listeners get a 10% discount on everything sold by Supernatural using coupon code TI10 at checkout.
Excellent.
So, thank you, Supernatural, and we'll be reminding you all about how you can win a free Supernatural kit throughout the year.
And I shall be washing my new Vast Gold long-termer.
Are we going to talk about that?
Probably not.
Okay.
Apart from the fact that it's new, vast and gold, I'll just sort of leave it there.
Okay.
We will talk about it on this podcast, but not necessarily this podcast.
Okay, fine. So we'll revisit that later on. But that's right. You've got a new long-termer, the BMW that you've been living with for a few months. Has gone.
Well, the i5, which was replaced by the 530e, they have now both gone back to their makers. And if you look at the TI website and app later this week, can't quite tell you exactly which day because we may have to do a bit of juggling, but sometime during the course of the week, the story of those two cars and how I got on them will be published.
Good, and we'll introduce your new car soon after that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get on with this week's episode proper. British Grand Prix. My goodness, Silverstone just always delivers, doesn't it?
I mean, it was bonkers, wasn't it?
That track and a bit of weather.
That's all you need, isn't it? I mean, it does deliver and it's wonderful, but it is also, it does become a bit of a lottery, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite random.
I couldn't be happy. I once met and interviewed Nico Hülkenberg when he was, when he won Le Mans with Porsche in 15?
One out of one. He's done
it
once. He's won it.
Yeah, exactly.
And he hasn't gone back.
And he hasn't gone back. And so I interviewed him, and he was just such a nice guy.
Yeah,
he was very, very open, and he gave us all the time that we need. And I just thought he's one of the good guys. And after 239 Grand Prix starts, there he was on the podium. Couldn't be happier for him.
I was really pleased, even though he kept my guy off the podium, and it would have been his first podium in a Ferrari. He would have continued that extraordinary podium streak that he's got at Silverstone, Lewis Hamilton. I was still delighted.
He's been on the podium at every British Grand Prix since, I think, 2013.
And he's won most of them.
And he's won 9 of them.
It is an extraordinary record.
Unmatched by any other driver at any other individual circuit.
Yeah.
I mean, so extraordinary. He's done 20 British Grand Prix, and I've written about this on the TI website and app, which you can go and have a look at right now. He's done 20 British Grand Prix. And on only 2 occasions has he finished worse than he finished yesterday, if you're listening to this on Monday.
That is extraordinary.
So 4th or above on 18 out of 20 occasions. And he's never retired from one.
Blimey, that's a heck of a record.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, I mean, that podium streak's come to an end, which is a shame. But actually, I was pleased for Nico because I've always liked him and I've always rated him.
Yeah, exactly. And he's kind of like, he's one of the old guys now, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He's like 37, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fair play to him.
And he started 19th, didn't he? But, I mean, he drove beautifully. The team Sauber got the
calls right.
strategy calls just right.
But it goes to show, doesn't it, that at a race like that, where everything is effectively up in the air, and actually, I think it is fair. I mean, there will be a lot of people, largely Australians, who think that Oscar was robbed. And in one respect, he was, insofar as he was leading the race. It wasn't like he was overtaken for the lead, and I have no doubt at all that had things continued as they were, then he would have continued to do that, and he would have won the race. But he made a mistake.
And why? Why? Just a bit of inexperience, bit of night. You can't do that.
I wonder whether it wasn't actually trying to play mind games on Max in the same way that Max plays mind games on other people. And I think that he has recognised. I think that Piastri has recognised that Max does treat him a bit differently to everybody else. And Max knows that he hasn't managed to mess with Piastri's brain. So maybe this is Piastri was trying to mess a bit with Max's brain and just kind of, put him on edge or whatever. And he just overdid it. I was listening to Damon talking on BBC commentary. And he was very clear that what he did was over the top and that the penalty was deserved. And Lando Lando's made bigger mistakes than that and paid the price, hasn't he? Look at Canada. But Lando didn't make any mistakes yesterday.
Yeah.
And in a race like that, in conditions like that, as Nico and Lando found out, those who don't make the mistakes and make the best calls do the best.
Yeah, Lando Norris, he has really bounced back from that catastrophe at the Canadian Grand Prix.
Yeah, he has.
He's won the last two. Austria, he won in imperious fashion.
Yeah.
And he was the guy yesterday who didn't put a foot wrong.
And I still think of his performance at Monaco and all the pressure he was under and on that circuit. And I just thought he was brilliant there. But I still think Piastri will be champion.
Do you?
I do. I mean, yeah, I do, because I think that Lando will still make mistakes. I think on pure pace, I've always thought that Lando was the slightly quicker driver. I don't think I do think that anymore. I don't think you can get a fag paper between them. Yeah. And I think that Oscar will just make fewer mistakes. And over the course of a 24-race championship, that's what will decide it when pace is not a determinant, I think.
Yeah. My view is that Lando Norris's ultimate potential is greater, but he is more inconsistent and he makes more errors. And so over the course of a championship, Oscar Piastri is more consistent and delivers.
And look at the multiple champions. Look at Verstappen, look at Hamilton, look at Schumacher. These aren't guys who, they all make mistakes and have all made mistakes, but their championships have been delivered as much through consistency as through sheer speed. And that's what you need, particularly these days when, a tenth of a second can be several places on the grid.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is amazing. What did you think of Bernie's comment about Lewis was lucky to win all those that he did because the competition wasn't as strong as it is there? I mean, my hackles naturally just rose at the very thought of the idea. And then I thought about it a bit more. And I think it was the wrong thing to say and absolutely the wrong way to say it. But is it true now when you look at these, sometimes less than a tenth, these fractions of seconds which determine the places on the grid and how closely matched they are? Is Formula One not more competitive now than it has ever been?
Yeah, I think it probably is. Bernie just loves to stir the pot, doesn't he?
Yes.
That's what he was doing. And he's done it for decades. But I put out a tweet a few weeks ago saying, which group of drivers in their prime do we all think was best? I did it as a poll on X. And I took the champions from the previous generation, Raikkonen, Alonso, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Button, Vettel, Rosberg, those six guys.
Yeah.
And I took the multiple race winners from the current generation and Verstappen, who's the only champion of that lot.
Yeah.
So Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri, Norris. I think it's just those 5. Apologies if I'm missing someone. So, the cream of this generation, the cream of the last generation, who's best at their prime? And overwhelmingly, people said the previous generation was the better cohort.
Oh, so you are sorry, not who was best, but which generation?
Which generation was best?
That's really interesting. But do you think that's because this generation hasn't yet had time to get all those championships and their records are as yet unproven, whereas obviously...
George Russell, sorry, I forgot to mention George Russell.
One of the reasons they haven't won championships is they just haven't been doing it for anything like as long as the previous lot.
I think that probably is right. And in 5-10 years, we'll have to review this whole thing again, won't we?
Yeah.
But I've said a few times that I think this current crop is just supernaturally talented, and they are. But actually, the previous lot were good as well.
Yeah, and also, Bernie makes that comment right at the end of a rules era, when the cars will all be the most closely matched because they will have all been developed to the absolute peak potential of those rules. I suspect next year, in fact, I would be absolutely gobsmacked if the grids are as tightly packed next year as they were this year. Because you're going into entire new technology, but 50% of the power deployed will have to be generated through electricity. And some teams are going to, as we always see, as happened with Red Bull in the last one, or the current one, if you like, and Mercedes in the previous era, someone will get it more right than anybody else. And it'll take everybody else, the entire course of that rules era, to catch up. So I think it says as much about the period of time that we're in as the drivers on the grid. They are a fantastically talented bunch, but I just don't think you suddenly, if in one decade, drivers just turn up with more talent than I suspect the drivers today have got no more or no less talent than the drivers of the 1950s.
Yeah, the best of the best.
They're just
the
best of the best, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they do because the processes of finding them and the academies and everything else, it cuts out a lot of the guesswork out of it. But generally speaking, I think if you're a really great driver, you're a really great driver. I don't think that that changes from generation to generation or decade to decade.
No, I agree. So should we? We're halfway through the 2025 season, aren't we?
Yeah.
Let's do a couple of minutes on that. I mean, we've said a couple of times before that this season hasn't turned into the epic 4-way constructors title fight we hoped it would be, the 6-way drivers fight that we hoped it would be.
Yeah.
McLaren are running away with it.
Yeah, have run away with it. I know that McLaren had a fantastic late season fight back last year after Red Bull appeared to be running away with it. That's not going to happen this year.
No.
That McLaren is too good in too many different environments, and it has its drivers, both of them, not one, both of them are too good for there to be any chance of that happening.
I agree. So, we haven't seen that epic duel, that epic battle that we kind of expected, but bravo to McLaren. They do deserve it. But what about the rest? Red Bull you wrote in your story that they have been massively exposed this season.
Yeah. It would be so interesting, wouldn't it, if you could, if there ever was such a thing as an average Formula One driver and you put 2 of those on the Red Bulls to see where it would come. I'm not sure it would beat the Racing Bulls.
I think you're right. It's curious.
I don't. Armchair generals like us who just sort of sit on the sidelines, having never driven a modern Formula One car and pontificate and make judgments on things which frankly we know almost nothing about. But, the stats are the stats. And if you make a Formula One car that a really good Formula One driver and an experienced and acknowledged really good Formula One driver like Yuki Tsunoda simply can't drive, can't get off the back of the grid, and that happened with the 2 previous drivers in that number 1 seat, Liam Lawson and Checo Perez. But there's one guy who can stick it on pole. Does that say more about the car or does it say more about that driver? It has to say more about the car, doesn't it?
So I think the car is fundamentally very, very fast, but extremely tricky. And this isn't to diminish Max Verstappen at all. He's possibly the only guy in the world who can squeeze the performance out of that car. But it's not like it's an inherently midfield car that he's somehow sticking on pole. I think I think that car has massive pace in it, but extracting it is almost impossible.
But if you build a car that even a really good Formula One driver can't make the most of, and is so spooked by the thing that he can't get off the back of the grid, that to me is not a good car. It's a great car in theory. In practice, and frankly, practice is the only thing that matters. It's a poor car.
It's not the way to go about Grand Prix racing at all.
And particularly if you're a manufacturer, and actually all manufacturers really care about a Constructors' Championship, you're never going to win one with one driver.
Red Bull are a bit stuffed at the moment.
It'd be really. I mean, next year, they've lost their Honda engines.
Yeah.
They're toddling off to Aston Martin. They got their own engine with Ford electronics, and you can't prejudge anything. Maybe it'll be fantastic, but it's a hell of an ask. And Max sitting there, with Toto stirring the pot, and knowing that the general view in the paddock at the moment, isn't it, that. And I think that Alex Brundle said this when he came on our podcast, is that Mercedes is the team that is regarded as being the most likely.
Again, last time,
because unlike the current regime, the next era is viewed to have been one which, like the Mercedes era, if you like, is going to be heavily dominated by whoever does the best powertrain. And I think the smart money in the paddock right now has got that absolutely on Mercedes. And how many teams is Mercedes going to power next year? Well, they get the Alpine get it, don't they?
Yeah. Williams, McLaren,
Mercedes,
almost half.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a power unit formula again, and this sort of very public flirtation with Verstappen is fascinating, but it raises the question: if Wolff really wants Verstappen, and if Verstappen is available, who loses their drive?
Who would you kick out? You've got Antonelli, who I think is a super talent, but is at the moment, being absolutely shown the way home by George. And I think George has done a brilliant job in stepping into Lewis's shoes and being a real team leader in a car that is clearly got massive problems when the weather's not quite right for it. Here's the question. Would George be happy to have Max as a teammate? You see, I think he probably would, in the same way that, remember how mad we thought Jensen was to go and become Lewis's teammate?
Yeah.
And he didn't really, he didn't beat Lewis, to a championship or anything, but he did pretty well. And I think George would probably back him. I don't know. Who would you get rid of?
It's so tough.
I mean, is Antonelli turning out to be the second coming that everybody thought he was going to be? Or is, in fact, is Hadjar not actually the greatest rookie on the grid?
Hadjar's done so well.
He has.
Antonelli said that his crash last season at Monza, do you remember he did the FP1?
Yeah, absolutely. And he had a big one, didn't he, down at the Parabolica?
Yeah. He said that he overcorrected after that incident and he's been too cautious. And it certainly looks that way. We haven't seen a great deal of spark from him yet. But I think
you get into that mindset, don't you? And that becomes the way that you drive. Leaning on my vast reserves of knowledge racing in Formula One. So he's got to break out of it, hasn't he?
He has, and quite quickly.
Or maybe he's just taking the view that this is a learning season, and that works very well if he's still got a seat next year.
Yeah. But it's no good if he's out on his ear and he hasn't done enough to win a new seat elsewhere. So if it is Max and George next season, that blows up at some point, doesn't it?
Well, those two, yeah. Well, they don't have to be in the same pit garage for that to blow up, do they?
No.
Does it? So and maybe for that reason alone, George wouldn't want it. But then again, George might not have a say in it. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's not like I'm sure that Max could say absolutely who his teammate was going to be in any team that he wanted to go to. I don't think George has that power at Mercedes. So come on, who would you get with your Toto? And you've got Max. I'd get rid of Antonelli, I'm afraid. Because
but Antonelli is his protege.
Yeah.
And he manages Antonelli, and he's invested a lot of his own money in Antonelli.
So you got to park all that. You got to think to yourself, who's going to win? Who's going to get us the Constructors' Championship? Who is going to maximum? Who is going to most quickly advance and progress this new car in this new technological era? One absolute superstar, another guy who's one of the best drivers out there, both massively experienced now, or a newbie who is still not managed to quite prove himself.
I think you're probably right. But what I would do is back my current drivers.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And then,
if they think they're going to have a great car next year, they won't need to bring Verstappen in. And they've got great drivers, we think, in Antonelli. We think his potential is enormous.
We think.
I'd back my guys.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Well, that's easy to say, isn't it?
So do you think actually Toto's got no intention of signing Max and he's just winding up Horner?
Maybe.
Well, that wouldn't be a first either, would it?
It wouldn't. It really wouldn't. But I mean, yeah, if Verstappen does bail, Red Bull are going to be in the spot of bother. And Horner said over the weekend that his plan B is Oscar Piastri, didn't he? Again, probably just trying to wind up Zach Brown.
Yeah, but that's all presuming that Oscar Piastri, who is in absolutely the car to be in, with a Mercedes engine, knowing he's got a Mercedes engine, thinking to myself, I'm going to go to a team where there is a car which, as we have seen so far this season, only one bloke can drive, and it hasn't even got its Honda engine in it anymore. Is he really going to toss the coin like that? I would say not, but who knows? It's going to be fascinating.
What I've learnt this year, and you'll be very, very familiar with this, having been a Scuderia supporter all your life.
Yeah.
And I am all of a sudden, and goodness, why would that be?
Why would that be?
But I realise now how frustrating it is, certainly in this era, this modern era, being a Ferrari fan. They just don't seem to be a top draw operation at all.
No, I mean, to me, I have no idea. What you can't say that they haven't got the drivers to do the job.
No.
Okay, that I think is that is not a defensible position, and the car clearly can be quick. What it lacks, which is what Ferrari always seems to have lacked, is that kind of. We've made this observation. In fact, when sort of Red Bull blew up, halfway through last season with all the stuff that was being said about Horner, and I bumped into Mark Webber at the Festival of Speed, and he was saying to me, it's not enough to have a really good engine, really good drivers, a really good chassis. You can have all the ingredients, but if you don't, it's like having all the ingredients for the world's finest, name your own meal here. If you don't cook them properly, it's still going to taste like what. That to me seems to be the problem with Ferrari. They've got the resources, they're just not deploying them properly, and it seems as ever, disorganized, crisis. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's completely wrong. Maybe they are cold and clinical and calculating, but that's not the way that the world sees it, and the results certainly, to me, seem to reflect that too.
Yeah. I mean, Silverstone almost looked like a bit of a turning point because for the first time this season, both cars looked to be quick enough to get pole.
Yeah.
They really were rapid. And on the Friday, they looked so quick. And maybe even in with a shout of winning the Grand Prix. They looked that fast. But then the rain came. And, Lewis said it several times. The Ferrari just doesn't look nice to drive in those conditions. And Charles put it off several times, didn't he? It just looked like a nightmare.
Yeah, so... Again, it's not, you can't blame the drivers.
No.
They haven't produced the product that is needed for those drivers to do what they do best. And if they did, they'd be fighting for the championship, as they were until the very last race of last season. Yeah, I find it bewildering.
Close but no cigar. It's been that way for a long time.
So long, and and the last time was when, you had Ross Brawn and Jean Todt and Michael Schumacher and Rory Byrne. And, you had all these people. And I don't know, and that team, I think, was bigger than the cult of Ferrari at the time.
Yeah.
And so they were able to railroad through what was required to put together not just a fast car or a great result in a single race, but season after season after season. I can remember thinking at the time, for Michael Schumacher, a really bad day is third place.
Yeah, it was.
And it was like that for such a long time.
Yeah.
And that's what they need. They need to put together a team of people who can just cut through all the... Because, Ferrari, it's just, it's racing for the honour of Ferrari, and there is so much stuff, peripheral stuff, that just goes with it, and it gets in the way. It's a racing team, and you do what is ever required to do to get that team winning. And the rest of it doesn't matter, because the team's not winning, it's not doing the job anyway.
Right, okay. They did win the constructors in 2008 and the drivers in 2007, but you're right, the last time that was a consistently top draw team was the Schumacher era, and that was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now.
Yeah, so when did they last win the constructors?
2008.
And the drivers.
Oh, yeah.
In the same year.
The Schumacher era, yeah. More than 20 years ago.
More than 20 years ago.
Yeah. Ancient history. Well, let's see what they can do next season. They've got a huge advantage over several other teams in being one of the few with an in-house engine department, and so they can, properly coordinate chassis and powertrain. But even if they build a great car, they still need to function as a great operation.
I would love it if they did, just to see the red cars out front again and everybody else chasing. To me, there's a little bit of me which thinks that's Formula One, and it would be great to see. But at the same time, I'm having such a ball watching those two young guns in those papaya cars.
It's great, isn't it?
And you're absolutely right. It hasn't turned out to be the season that we expected, or indeed probably the one that we'd hoped. But I still think that the Lando and Oscar thing will run and run, and I think it will blow up big time between those two at some stage.
And halfway through the season, there's 8 points between them.
Yeah.
So it's finely poised. So as we're talking Ferrari and McLaren, Luca di Montezemolo.
Luca.
Who saw that coming?
Not me.
So, what was it, last week, or maybe the week before, it was revealed that Di Montezemolo has joined, is he on the board at McLaren Holdings?
It's called McLaren Holdings, isn't it? Yeah. And I think it's one of these sort of advisory positions.
Yeah.
Along with Torsten Müller-Ottfoss, who is the person who, as the boss of Rolls-Royce, has just turned that company into an absolute, a fantastically successful division of BMW. So they got some serious players there. But you had Di Montezemolo, once a Ferrari, now at McLaren.
So he was brought in. Was it back in the 70s by Enzo to sort out the F1 team?
Yeah, in the mid 70s, in 73 or 74, he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And then he presided over, the World Championship wins in 75 and 77 with Niki Lauda. They won the Constructors in 76 when Hunt won the championship. And obviously they won again in 79 with Jody Scheckter. Having gone, before Lauda's win in 75, the previous time they won the championship was in 64 with John Surtees on pretty much the last lap of the last race of the season. He won it by a single point. He'd gone into that race with almost no chance, and everybody thought it was going to be either Jim Clark or Graham Hill. And then I could do an entire podcast on that race. I won't. But yeah, and that had been, up until that point, Ferrari's biggest drought. It's dwarfed by the drought that they're in now. And that was largely Luca. And then he went off, and then he came back again in the mid 90s when Ferrari's road car product, when they had the Testarossa and the Mondial and the 348, the worst product lineup in that company's history. And he turned that into the 355 and the 456 and the 550 Maranello and and the F50, and it was just like wow, well that was Luca.
So he turned around the F1 team, he turned around the road car division.
Yeah.
So
now this will be very different. Luca is now in his, he must be 75, 76 years old.
Yeah, he's not going to be visiting.
He's not going to be camped out in Woking.
The tier 1 suppliers and persuading them to send their.
He is going to be. He's going to be in his large and really rather lovely home in Italy, on the end of a call, in board meetings every so often, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's in charge and he'll be making the ultimate decisions.
No.
But he's still Luca, and if you don't listen to him, more fool you.
Do you think that's what McLaren needs? That sort of influence?
I think more than anything else, what McLaren needs is to be sold to a massive OEM. I've said it many, many times.
Yeah.
It's... I mean, I think it certainly can't do any harm. And I've always regarded him as a... well, I mean, he's just a... I mean, I know him a little bit, and I've interviewed him a few times, and we've always got on. He's a proper car guy. He was massively anti the Ferrari SUV. And, one wonders whether, had he not been fired by Sergio Marchionne, whether Ferrari would have gone public when it did, whether it would therefore have been compelled for shareholder value to make as many cars as it now makes, whether therefore the issue that the company now faces with the depreciation its cars are beginning to see, which is not something we've experienced before, you wonder whether all that would happen. At the same time, Ferrari is a company who I think make more money per car than any other company in the world. Its market capitalization is absolutely enormous compared to the number of cars that it makes.
Yeah.
So it's not as if Ferrari is any kind of failure. But he's a smart guy. He's a passionate guy. And I think for a company like McLaren, which is defined by making proper drivers' cars, I think his advice would be highly sought after and very, very highly valued. But I don't think it can, just because you appoint Luca di Montezemolo to the board of McLaren Holdings, that suddenly McLaren's troubles have gone away. I think McLaren's troubles are fundamental and need not just the money, but much more importantly, the technology and the supplier clout that you only get with a big OEM, Foursquare behind you.
Can you briefly just trot through McLaren's issues? What are they struggling with at the moment?
Well, I mean, so they have their product lineup is too limited. It's all, carbon-bodied V configuration, mid-engine two-seaters. They've got historic problems, which have, in my view, have completely gone away with quality control and reliability. But as we all know, those reputations they take no time at all to build, and they take forever to get rid of. There was obviously also the issues that they had with the Artura, which was first late and then had a somewhat suboptimal launch, to put it mildly. I think there's the issue that they are still regarded as the new kids on the block. McLaren Automotive has been making cars for about 14 years now, whereas, the companies they're up against, the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis, have been at it for decades and decades and decades. So I think there's all of that. I think they need a broader product portfolio. And
what would you do? Right, you are Luca. Congratulations. You have all this influence over the board, and they want your opinion. We've only ever done this type of car before.
Yeah.
We recognise that we need to branch out and do something different that brings in new buyers.
Yes.
And perhaps at greater volumes, maybe not. What kind of car are you suggesting?
I would do a front engine. I'd do a 550 Maranello.
Right.
I'd do a front engine, GT orientated, but still very driver centric, premium, 2, maybe 2+2, or maybe with an option, a Vanquish rival, a 12 cilindri rival. I'd do one of those and add it to the portfolio. I know what you're going to ask me. Should it do an SUV? I'd look at what Bugatti is doing, and I know they're a completely different price point, and it's all a bit mad. But for them to do a naturally aspirated V16, I'd be looking at doing that, and I'd just be looking at doing the most purest stuff possible, because you've got to differentiate yourself from the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis of this world. And I think maybe by doing that, I mean, if McLaren produced a manual V12 front engine carbon bodied two-seater, I don't believe it wouldn't sell.
It would sell.
Which sounded like you'd gone to heaven and back in a day.
You don't need to sell thousands of them a year either. It's a halo car.
No.
It proves a point.
But whether that also, just because a car sells doesn't mean it's going to make money. So, I mean, how do you make that V12? Where do you get that V12 from?
Yeah.
You know, the realities, you know, you and I can sit here and blindly say that, but you need an all new platform.
Yeah.
Well, where's that going to come from?
Yeah.
You may or may not need an all new engine, but you could probably do something based on the bore spacings and the technology in the they've got a 3-litre V6.
Two of those.
A 120 degree 3-litre V6.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
Maybe you can make a 60 degree 6-litre V12 and put a hybrid on it or not. But at the same time, they also have to keep absolutely true to their roots and their values, which means it has to be light, it has to be carbon, it has to be a driver's car. The question that I really wrestle is whether, if there was some overseeing OEM with an SUV platform, should you spin a McLaren SUV off it? Because although the thought of it kind of slightly horrifies me, we know from the Porsche example what that then enables you to do. Because if that car flies and sells in large quantities at massive margins, what that money then enables you to do with your core products, with your two-seaters, is transformative.
And would you go down the Aston Martin approach, whole new platform, whole new factory to build the DBX, or was that ultimately overkill?
I think for Aston Martin, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the finances are, but Aston Martin's finances have always been quite up and down, to put it mildly. I think it probably was overkill. I suspect that if Aston Martin had been owned by Mercedes-Benz or BMW at the time, they would have just gone, "You've got to be kidding." But I don't know. But yes, I said it at the time, the idea of doing an all-new car on an all-new platform in an all-new factory when you're Aston Martin, it was so bold.
Yeah.
And locating that factory, 150 miles away from anything else. It was an extraordinary thing to do. And the cars it produces are, the DBX is fantastic. But with the amount of spare capacity they must have there, I suspect I'd be amazed if it's running at 1/3 capacity. So, yeah, I think if they had their time again, they would have found another way of doing it. Whether they would have done the DBX on a Mercedes platform, which was certainly available to them at the time, their view was you can do that, but the problem is that everybody knows it's a Mercedes platform, and so that creates issues all by itself. And you can't have anything quite where you want it to be, and so it's not going to look the way that you want it to be, and it's not going to behave the way that you want it to be.
But people don't not buy Uruses and Bentegas for that reason.
No, you're absolutely right.
I think just park your pride, plonk a nice top hat on top of someone else's SUV, sell a bunch of them. They won't cost a fortune to build because you're not having to tool up an entire factory from scratch and design a car from scratch.
So where would you build them?
So you might need a new factory, but developing your own platform from nothing is a vast undertaking.
Yeah.
Am I suggesting that you build a few on the behind all the Tuaregs going down the line at VW or whatever? Probably not. I think you need to build them, but I just don't see that the DBX approach has worked for Aston Martin, and I just don't see that it's necessary. It's a great car for that kind of vehicle.
It is.
But does it need to be that good? Really, people just want something prestigious and stylish and comfortable and luxurious, don't they?
So if they'd done a reskinned GLS class or whatever they call it, the big 750 or an ML or whatever they call that big SUVs, and they'd done, Marek Reichman had done and his team had done a really nice body for it, and they'd just gone, there's the Aston Martin SUV. Do you think that would have been enough? It might well have been. As you say, it worked for Bentley and it worked for Lamborghini.
What I don't know enough about is the basic underpinnings of the Mercedes. It might be that they are fundamentally wrong and they really do limit what you can do in a way that the Volkswagen Group platform does not. So perhaps this argument is fundamentally flawed, but if you can produce a decent product off the back of someone at a Mercedes platform, I think for most people that is absolutely adequate.
So the company that I think is probably most frequently referred to as the OEM au choix for McLaren, just because it fits the portfolio so well, is BMW.
Yeah.
And, from McLaren's point of view, BMW have done wonders with Mini, they've done wonders with Rolls-Royce, and from BMW's point of view, they've got the super ultimate luxury car brand in Rolls-Royce. They've got Mini carving a lovely niche for itself out there. What they don't have is a supercar brand.
It seems to fit, doesn't it?
And it seems to fit that beautifully. And so therefore what we would be looking at is, I guess, some kind of, reskinned X5.
Or 7. Yeah. I mean,
which would then also give them the option of all sorts of plug-in EV should the time come, and you've got to think far into the future, because the idea now of an electric McLaren makes my blood freeze. But we all know where everything's going to end up eventually. I don't know.
I mean, I don't want McLaren to do this, but from a purely commercial point of view, it does seem like the more sensible approach.
If it allows them to build more cars like the 720S, and it allowed them to do a really cracking front-engine GT,
wonderful.
I want them to do it.
Wonderful, exactly. Okay, we've got just a couple of other things that we want to mention. Lotus. So a couple of weeks ago, there were these rumours swirling, weren't there, that Hethel was for the chop.
They were a bit more than rumours. I mean, they were reported in the Financial Times. I mean, this wasn't something you read on, the back of Hello magazine or whatever. It was, it was some serious reporters reporting something that they believed to be true. Yeah, which was that Lotus was going to close Hethel. The place that has been the headquarters of Lotus for, I don't know, maybe I can't remember when they've been up there, but it's a long time. 60s, early 70s?
Something like that, yeah.
And when I think of Lotus, I'm sure when you think of Lotus, you think of Hethel. Certainly ever since I've been in this business, I've only ever gone to Hethel. And I think it is synonymous with Lotus now. And there were these strong suggestions that they were thinking of. I don't think anybody actually said that they were going to, but they were thinking of shutting it, which led to what I thought was a quite carefully worded retraction from Lotus, saying that we have no plans. But if you're thinking of something, you haven't planned to do it, have you?
It left just enough sort of room for them to go. Okay, well,
we didn't have any plans then, but we do now.
Yeah.
I think that these things. I don't think that that sort of smoke rises on the horizon without some kind of fire underneath it. Now, I suspect that the truth is that both are right. That they are thinking of it, but they have made no plans to do it. And so, what has been said on both sides is not actually as inconsistent as it seems. I think the bigger question is, what are the ramifications for Lotus? Were it let us say, and I don't know this is going to happen. I have no idea whether it's going to happen, but I think it's a completely different scenario. If they shut Hethel but opened somewhere else in the UK as their headquarters, then I think that's one thing. If they shut Hethel and then open a brand new Lotus HQ somewhere in America or in China, I think that's a very different state of affairs. And what are the implications for Lotus then? If it ceases making cars in Britain, if it ceases to be headquartered in Britain, does it not then just become another sub-brand? Does it not just become another MG?
Yeah. It loses that authenticity, that connection to its astonishing heritage. That all goes. But the company is having a difficult time.
Putting it very mildly.
It backed EV heavy and hard and early, and it would seem too early.
The gamble has not paid off.
Yeah.
And if you look at projected production numbers for the EMEA and for the Electra, they are fractions.
Really?
Of what they originally announced. I mean, small fractions. So ouch. Maybe they've got to do something.
Yeah.
But then when does a Lotus stop having any connection to? I mean, at the moment, those cars are are built in China. They are massively heavy, 4-door electric. Well, one's a sort of saloon and the other's an SUV. They have no resonance with anything that Lotus has ever done before. And if they lose their British HQ, in what way is any car that comes thereafter a Lotus, other than in the badge that's on its nose?
Complicate and add batteries doesn't really ring true to Lotus, is it?
Add batteries, no.
So, well, we'll wait and see. I think you're right. There has to be something beneath those reports that I can't imagine that they came from nowhere. But we'll just have to watch.
They didn't come from nowhere. Somebody has clearly said something. Now, it may have been that they shouldn't have said it, or that they weren't right, or whatever, but they haven't come from nowhere. The Financial Times doesn't just sit there and think, oh,
what should we write about this week?
We haven't got a page 6 column league tomorrow. We better just invent something about Lotus. That doesn't happen. So there's something in it.
They also wouldn't pick on Lotus because it's not a big story, a big enough story, is it? No. So there has to be something there. Right, we're going to wrap this up, but you've been doing something very, very special, driving a very special car.
Oh my goodness.
You're going to write about it on the app and website very, very soon.
Yes.
Do you just want to tease it?
Do you want me to say what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I have driven a Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR, which is the kind of car in which Stirling Moss won the 1955 Mille Miglia at a record speed, which was then never thereafter broken. And so far as anyone who was there on the day when I drove it at the test track in Stuttgart can remember, they don't know even if, let alone when, any journalist has ever been allowed to drive any SLR. So the sense of privilege is just, off all my known scales. Not only that, but the car that I drove, they made 10, and this was the 10th. It is the only car. So, there was an original plan for Mercedes to race both in 1955. Well, they raced in 54, but the SLR raced in 55, and it was going to race in 56. Now, for reasons that, some will say it's because of the terrible accident at Le Mans in 55. Others will say that Mercedes were planning it all along, but they withdrew from racing at the end of 1955. So the 1956 car never raced, but they did make one car at the end of 1955, which was the ultimate SLR, which had myriad different detail changes on it. It was 62 kilos lighter than Moss's car. And this is that car. So it's not just a 300 SLR. It is the ultimate 300 SLR. And I don't know what multiple of millions that car is worth. But I drove it in Stuttgart around their test track. They were incredibly trusting with their car and generous with their time and understanding of what I needed to do with it to get the story that we needed to get. And I was just kind of blown away by the whole thing.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to publish that on the Intercooler. It's very, very special.
There is also, given that the whole thing was conducted on a concrete test track, Olgun Cordell, our mate, photographer, there's an absolute banger of a shoot to go with it.
I can't wait. I can't wait for everyone to see it. It's going to be fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, well, listen, let's wrap this one up here.
Sorry, can I just say that no one's going to see it unless they subscribe to the Intercooler website and app.
As if we haven't mentioned that enough already. Yes. Hopefully you've all understood.
Yes, the-intercooler.com.
Okay, well, listen, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, if that's what you're doing on YouTube. And as Andrew says, you can subscribe at the-intercooler.com and use discount code POD20 to get a 20% discount on year one. Thanks, everyone, for listening, for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
See you then.